Starring, produced, directed and co-written by Sean Whalen. We are talking Crust from 2024. This one also stars Rebekah Kennedy, Felicia Rose and Dan Roebuck. Now, Crust is a quirky, off-the-wall horror comedy about a sock monster. Let me just say that. So, the story. Sean Whalen's character is a once child star who is now grown up and is he owns a laundrette or a laundromat, as you call it in the States, and he's kind of just depressed, and you know his life hasn't gone like he has expected, and you know he pleasures himself by ejaculating in socks and just throws them in a kind of discarded pile, as well as kind of blowing his nose, crying into them. So he has this pile of socks which is infused with variety of bodily fluids, you might say. And one day this kind of pile of socks magically comes alive and turns into Crust, a sock monster. And Crust is very protective, and it takes out anyone who is a threat to our main character, including someone who has filmed him masturbating and posted it to social media and the like. Along the way, we've got Rebekah Kennedy, who is a new love interest, potentially, who with a bit of a secret. Felicia Rose as his previous partner, and Dan Roebuck as his business partner and friend. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's talk about it. Now, this is a quite bizarre, quirky movie. It's obviously a movie that is a film which you can't take like seriously, of course, so therefore you have to take it somewhat at face value. You can't really review this as a serious movie with oh, this didn't really make sense. It's not trying to make sense. It's just meant to be a weird, quirky movie. It kind of comes across like a stage play. It literally all takes place within this kind of laundrette, either out on the the floor or in the back in the office and something. That's it. And yeah, it feels like a kind of a improv stage show. So a tasting here is going to be if you like it or you don't, really, in regards to the actual tone and the kind of the style of the movie that it is. So we've got to kind of try and look beyond that. Is it your style of movie and what is actually good and what maybe isn't what's so good about this movie. So what do I think did work? So I think the characters are quite well defined here. So the characters are all sort of larger than life. And as such, they're quite sort of distinctive. They're quite unique and quite sort of bold in many ways. But the film still manages to try and have these over-the-top, somewhat cartoonish characters still have a little bit of emotional cadence, for example, and a little bit of sort of depth to them to a degree, while still having this sort of over-the-top, kind of zany, quirky performance. So, something must be said for that. Obviously, the movie is not trying to be serious, as we've said, and you just got to accept the bizarre and really unexplained reason why there's a cum-drenched sock monster, basically, and just accept it. And in that respect, it's a kind of a fun, silly premise, but you can kind of look at it like a dog, in a way. So like a protective dog. And that's kind of the best analogy, really, is this kind of like this faithful pet, really, that is protective over its master. And then you can kind of see how this thing is kind of reacting, really. And then we have all these different people that kind of come in and out of Sean Whalen's character's life, and some might be devious in their sort of reasons for being in there and stuff. Some might be like more selfish reasons. Some might be more, altruistic. So it's it's this kind of like protective nature of this kind of creature and how it deals with what it sort of deems as external threats. There's also a little bit of sort of commentary on depression. There's a little bit of commentary on how fame might sort of affect people, especially sort of child stars, and you know how when you maybe are off the kind of the Hollywood train and how it might derail your life. And obviously there's sort of the money hungry sort of side of fame and everything like that. So there's some sort of things to be said that this movie is trying to kind of get across, and you know, you may find it interesting. Like I said, it sort of comes across like a kind of a play in many ways. So again, if you're liking more of that sort of theatre style performance, then again, you may want to sort of check it out. Let's talk about what doesn't work. I mean, it kind of comes across as a student film. I think this is Sean Whalen's directorial debut, as far as I'm aware. So it really comes across as something that you would make as a student whilst you are in film school. It does not feel like a movie which was made to be commercially viable. I believe this was probably, I think it was a crowd-funded movie as far as I can tell. So, you know, there's a whole list of like associate producers which tells you that. But thankfully they don't have all these remote roles, thank goodness. But it comes across as a student film, or the other way I would say, it comes across as this movie should have been a short. A 20-minute short as part of an anthology, a quirky sort of horror comedy. I've got to be honest, as much as this movie tries to have these zany characters, there's not actually a kind of a huge amount of story. It's basically a man and his dog, and that's kind of it. And all these people who, you know, want things, basically. The story isn't hugely sort of deep in any sort of way. It's not trying to be necessarily a complex story, but it for what it is, it's pretty basic, to be honest, on a narrative level. And the stylistic choices here, I've got to say, are quite tiresome for a feature for me. Now, I did check out a couple of reviews, and it seems to have a lot of positive feedback from many people. But to me, this way outstayed its welcome. It's just like, had this been, as I say, a short, it could have been a punchy, fun film. As a feature, man, it drags. Even though it's not a long film, the concept is just drawn out. The characters, although they're quite distinct, and you can kind of feel, you know, you understand the motivations to a point, nonetheless, they don't really feel like real characters. I mean, not supposed to, I would say, but even so, they just feel like you have a level of sort of disconnect. It's meant to be a comedy. It's not a particularly funny movie. There's a couple of like moments. That's about it. It's clearly, obviously, a low-budget movie, so don't be expecting any high kind of production value or anything like that. I don't think it's as charming as it thinks it is. I didn't think this movie was all that sort of clever or anything like that. You know, there's some stylistic choices which are nice. You know, things like it has like beer, just like a label on the beer can just says beer and stuff, and there's some sort of fun things like that. But you know, it really outstays its welcome. Even if you wanted to look at it at a slightly deeper level, you know, it's just a little bit on the kind of like the broad side. For example, Rebekah Kennedy's character is this new love interest, and she has sort of other reasons for being there, but you know, we're meant to believe at some point she's genuinely interested in the Sean Whalen character, but I never really felt any reason why she would be. I mean, like I said, she has alternate reasons for showing up, but even when she declares her love, I was thinking, I don't see what it is that you are finding particularly sort of why you're in love with this guy, because he's either kind of depressive, moody, you know, snaps and things like that. I didn't really feel there was this sort of any real genuine sort of chemistry there. And I know these two actors are actually friends off screen, but you know, in regards to the story, it didn't make any sense, even in the context of this movie, which is a movie which doesn't make sense. But so characters seem peripheral. Dan Roebuck's character again just seems peripheral. It just didn't. There's so many things here. I just felt superfluous to any type of point in this movie. To me, I've got to be honest with you, I didn't really like this movie. But I will say, with my critical hat on, I think the movie is quirky enough where I think it will be an interesting watch for some people. So I'm going to kind of judge this by what I think its genuine merits are as a film, rather than my personal, did I like it or not? But I'll give it a 5 out of 10, because I do think it has some merit in regards to having a very distinct kind of like look and feel. But I really felt this movie really lacked any substance, lacked any sort of genuine horror, comedy, even charm. I'll give it a 5 out of 10. Because I think this movie might appeal to some, and apparently it has. But yeah, for me, it was a little bit of a hard watch, I won't lie. 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.